everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers, been doing this over 2.5 decades apiece. It's a long time. And by that, I mean publicly commenting on your Minnesota Vikings. Yes, the team we all love and get ulcers over. Well, today is another day, and I am in my temporary studio right now because I've just completed the move up to St. Louis. We're waiting on the house to close, and there'll be a move right after the draft into the new place, hopefully on time. But for right now, you get green lushness behind me. But today we have 3 themes as usual. The first one is, gotta bring it back up. Here we go. First one, we're going to talk about the Tyler Williams effect. And I know it's misspelled in the paperwork. It's Tyler, not Tyrell. But hey, it is what it is. So we're going to talk about him. Who is he? He's the Vice President of Player Health and how that fits in to the current 2025 roster. Then we're going to talk about This Week in Vikings Land. We've got 3 topics in there that we're going to hit up. They're pretty cool. One about the top 30 visit. And I've tracked down 24 names so far on that. Darren wants to talk about those. We have also who's going to back up our beloved JJ McCarthy. And there's new news on that, possibly. And, of course, the closing of the door, verbally, to Aaron Rodgers. And, finally, we're going to finish up with the weakest link. What is that? We're talking about the left guard spot. Are you comfortable rolling with Blake Brandel into 2025? All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey there, buddy. How's things going in the Great White North?
Pretty good, Dave. How are you doing getting settled in St. Louis? What's going on?
I am, and I'm recovering from the move. It's a bitch when you're older like we are. But yes, getting all settled in. We're in the temporary digs, staying with my number 2 daughter, and I got the studio set up presently in the basement, and everything will work just fine. I wish to welcome everybody that's joined us so far. We got Yogi, we got Susan, we got Sarah, we got Doc, we got Laura, and Peter have all chimed in, and welcome to this beautiful Sunday to talk Minnesota Vikings football. As you can see, we talked about the weak link. That's what I put on the thumbnail. We will go to that in the 3rd theme. But until then, we've got 2 other themes to go over as well. Hey there, Disgusting Act. How are you? We start with theme 1. And for theme 1,
as Dave brings up the
graphics. There we go. The Williams effect.
Well, this theme came out of a few things in the offseason, Dave, particularly during free agency, but also got sparked by, there was an article by, I think, Mike Sando from The Athletic this week that took a shot or had a few unnamed NFL executives taking some shots at the Vikings offseason so far. And one of them took a shot at Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's free agent shopping spree and didn't think that it's going to go all that well for the Vikings. And now we know the Vikings were very busy there. They signed a bunch of guys, and some of them were a little bit long of the tooth. And the quote from that story from this executive said, "It's like the 2015 Colts all over again, signing older guys who've been hurt, who are on third or fourth contracts. You cannot build a team with old players, especially old players who have been cut because they were hurt." Now, I think that's that is I think it's somewhat of I think is a legitimate worry. It's a worry that I have because the Vikings signed 4 guys: Ryan Kelly, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, and Aaron Jones, who are all 30 or older. And they have committed a fair amount of dough to all 4 of those guys over the next 2 years. So if any of those guys are missing significant time in either next season or in 2026, that is a lot of financial resources that are going to be weighed up on the training table. And all 4 of these guys missed significant time either in 2023 or last year in 2024. So it's not that it's not a concern. And we know, Dave, that the belief is that as players get older, and in the NFL, 29, 30 is old at a lot of positions, but as players get older, it seems like they get hurt more. When they get hurt, it takes them longer to recover and get back into the lineup compared to when they were in their early 20s or mid 20s or even 20, 26, 27, 28. So for the Vikings to...
I feel that.
Yeah, yes, you did after all your packing. Your shoulders, your knees, all aching, Dave.
Yep.
Yes. Hands, yeah. And so that's, again, the Vikings have, this is something that their free agency wasn't all older guys, but they did sign a significant amount of their free agent crop was the 30 and over guys. And
of course, there's Harrison Hitman Smith too.
That's right, coming back. Mm-hmm. So, that's something that you got to think about. Now, but Kevin O'Connell was asked this at the NFL owners meetings recently in West Palm Beach. He got asked this, and his response was he didn't seem too fussed about the fact that the Vikings signed all these 30-year-old guys. And when he got asked about it and asked if he had any concerns about guys like Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, having significant injuries, Ryan Kelly too last year where they missed a lot of time. Again, he didn't seem very fussed about it. And his reasoning was, we got Tyler Williams. Mm-hmm. And so who is Tyler Williams? Well, I think most Vikings fans on here, if you have a pretty good, somewhat of an idea about him, but Tyler Williams is the Vikings vice president of player health and performance. He came to the Vikings when Kevin O'Connell became head coach in 2022. And I don't have any stats to back this up, Dave, but during that time from 2022 to last year, during when Tyler Williams has been the head guy of the Vikings player wellness, player health, and overseeing the training staff, the Vikings have been a pretty healthy team compared to a lot of NFL teams, I think. Now, yes, there have been some, a few big significant injuries, over those 3 years. Christian Darrisaw last year tears his ACL, MCL, and, that was a big blow to the Vikings. Kirk Cousins blowing out his Achilles in 2023 was a major, major blow to the Vikings. But those kind of big time season ending injuries really seem to be not the norm since Tyler Williams became, heading up the Vikings training staff and the training regiment and the whole player health thing. Really there's more often than not, he's been able to keep. You haven't seen many Vikings players miss significant time with more of the soft tissue stuff, the sprains and the hamstring strains and that sort of thing. He's been able to, and his training staff have been able to keep Vikings players ready to go week in, week out over a 17-game season in one of the most collision-heavy, probably the most collision-heavy sport there is. And I think that speaks volumes to the kind of job that he's done, and it speaks to why Kevin O'Connell is confident that even though they've signed some guys that are long in the tooth and are expecting them to play significant roles for the Vikings, that he's not worried that they're going to be in the training room and on the sidelines all of the time. And if you look at Tyler Williams, there's an old saying in sports that the best ability for a player is availability. And I think over the 3 years, Tyler Williams has been able to keep Vikings players, the vast majority of them, available over a 17-game regular season, even though it's a very violent sport. And you when you look at players, think highly of the job he does too. I think of Aaron Jones last year when he signed with the Vikings in training camp. In his interviews, he specifically mentioned that he felt the best he'd ever felt, probably since his rookie year. And he credited the Vikings training staff and Tyler Williams' team with giving him a very good prehab routine, so he'd feel ready and fresh to go into training camp. And also, and it ended up, we saw, yes, he did have some nicks. There were some times where we weren't sure he was going to play. But last year, Aaron Jones played all 17 regular season games, the full regular season for only the second time in his 8-year career. The Tyler Williams effect worked for him just fine. And Williams' training staff, they really seem to be able, not only during the season, keep players available, but they seem to have a really good handle on individualized plans for each Vikings player, again, to keep them not just during the regular season, but in the offseason, to get them ready for the rigors of a long, grueling training camp, 17-game season, and into the playoffs. And again, they seem to, that work that they do with each player, like Aaron Jones, allows most of those Vikings players to answer the bell game in and game out. Even the veterans, like we said, we've seen Harrison Hitman Smith has been very durable as he gets into 34, 35, 36 years of age with the Vikings. Stephon Gilmore missed a couple of games last year, but again, at 35, 36 years old, he played a lot more than I think a lot of people expected him, and he was in there pretty much every week. So Tyler Williams has shown that he can keep guys like Aaron Jones, the Stephon Gilmore, Harrison Smith, the older 30-plus guys in the lineup and contributing. And he's going to have to do it again this year because of how the Vikings have attacked free agency and some of the players that they've acquired. But yes, it's a worry that guys like Javon Hargrave or Jonathan Allen might miss time again this year with various nicks and bruises or maybe some serious injuries. But I think the track record of Tyler Williams and his training staff show that they can get the job done. And it's not just Jones that thinks highly of the Vikings training staff. In that NFLPA team report card that came out a couple of months ago, the Vikings training staff got an A grade from their players on the Vikings. The only other team that got an A grade was the Miami Dolphins. And there's only 4 other teams that got an A-. So Vikings players have a huge amount of confidence in Tyler Williams and his training staff. They think they're, as Kevin O'Connell said at the NFL owners meeting, they think that Tyler Williams and his team are world-class. And what we've seen in 3 years is that they are world-class. And that's why I think a lot of Vikings fans, and Kevin O'Connell in particular, who gets to see Tyler Williams week in, week out, month after month, working hard in there, that he's very confident that Tyler Williams is going to do all he can to keep Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Ryan Kelly, Aaron Jones, and Harrison Smith playing week in and week out, and playing well. And they're going to have to do that in 2025 because those guys are all going to have to play key roles for the Vikings to get to the playoffs. Because if some of those guys miss significant time, you're going to have to depend on younger, probably less proven players to fill their cleats. And you can't be sure that they're going to give you the same level of play as a Ryan Kelly would, or a Jonathan Allen would. So Tyler Williams and his staff, you don't hear about him a lot, but this year in particular, with the amount of 30-somethings that we have on the team, they're going to have a large role to play in whatever success the Vikings have in 2025.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Now I got 2 points I want to give up. First off, this was all started by somebody from, what was it, the 33rd team that generated the report, with an unknown team executive. Could somebody be jealous?
That's right. Could be.
Chicago hasn't had the greatest of health issues at all. I hear about it weekly, especially with their offensive line and defensive line, and everybody's getting hurt and they can't play and they can't do this and they can't do that. I think somebody was jealous. But hey, that's just me. That's a theory. Who knows?
Could that unnamed executive be Ryan Poles, Dave?
I don't
jealous
know.
at Kwesi because his Bears have gone 15-36 in his 3 years running the team. Never finished higher than tied for third in the division. Meanwhile, Kwesi's had a team that's had a 13-win season and a 14-win season and won a divisional title and been to 2 playoffs appearances in 3 years. Yeah, hey. Who would be jealous of such a thing?
Yeah, it's just a conspiracy theory. I don't know if it is or not, but it is. Yeah. And the second point I have is when the 2015 Colts did it, they were building a team with old players. We're not building a team with old players. We have young super studs as the columns and the foundation of this team. J.J. McCarthy, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. All these guys are under 30. Even Brian O'Neill's under 30. Darren, right? We have them on the other side of the ball too. These guys are augmenting the younger guys. It's not a build as this is the foundation. So if one of them fails, it's going to crumble. This is, hey, we're doing better. We're augmenting these guys so we have a better chance of winning, yes. Mm-hmm. But it's pure, hey, we're adding more frosting to the cake is what it's doing, and it happens to be the older guys. And that's how I view this. It's, yes, we're going to be one of the older teams because we've got some older players, but there's nothing wrong with that. You got the wisdom, you got the mentorship. They've been through it. They've done that, and they can help the younger guys behind them hopefully come up as well. And in the meantime, we're putting the best players on the field to give us the best chance of going to the Super Bowl. Our goal this year, so as every year, win that sucker. But we shall see. Disgusting acts a little bit jealous of the draft capital. Well, that's what happens when you suck. You get top 10 picks. So it is what it is. All right. That's the end of theme 1. And with that, we're off to theme 2. One of the favorite themes of the week, always. Click the right button. This week in Vikings land.
Yes, sir. Well, Dave.
Thank you, Mafia. Yeah. Very, very much. That's very appreciated.
We're only, 11 days from the NFL draft. Yes. This time in 2 weeks, the draft will be over. Pretty much, I think. It'll
be over. We'll be recapping it.
We'll be recapping it. We'll probably be trying to chase down the undrafted rookie free agents and that'll still be kind of up in the air of who we got. But yeah, the draft will be over. So, still a lot to talk about, though, in those 11 days. And First and SKOL will be doing that. Tyler will be. You will be. We will be. But because it's getting closer to draft time, the word's starting to leak out of all the draft prospects that the Vikings have met with, particularly their top 30, which are the guys that the Vikings bring to Egan to meet with them one-on-one, as opposed to meeting them at the combine or meeting them at one of the invitational all-star bowls that they have, or meeting them at the various pro days that the conferences and the teams hold. The Vikings are bringing in guys. And Dave, you sent me a social media post earlier this week that had 12 names on it of top 30 guys. And with a little bit more internet sleuthing, Tyler Forness, tracking it as well. As of yesterday, I found it looked like 24 names of draft prospects that the Vikings have brought in for their top 30. There you got them up there, Dave. And these are, as I said 2 weeks ago when we talked about the visits again, these are names you need to be familiar with. Not everybody is going to be a Viking, but some of these guys are going to be Vikings. Tyler's story in A to Z Sports mentioned that since I think 2020 the Vikings under the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell in the 3 years so far, they've drafted. Over those 3 drafts, they've drafted 5 guys that were top 30 visits. They drafted teammates of 5 guys who were top 30 visits, or they drafted 5 teammates of guys who were top 30 visits. And they've also signed 8 undrafted rookie free agents who they met with as top 30 picks. So that's a pretty large number of your top 30 that the Vikings ended up becoming Vikings. So again, keep some of these guys are going to be Vikings in a couple of weeks. We don't know who they're going to be, but always an interesting list to look at. And I wanted to make a couple of comments about this list of 24. The first thing that stands out to me, and Dave, you can talk about what you think about or what stood out to you as well, and everybody else here in the chat. But one thing that stands out to me is that you got 3 defensive tackles from Georgia who have the Vikings have brought in for top 30 visits. You got Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, and then Ingram Dawkins. I know the Vikings.
Not all 3 of them are reporting on Starks, the safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. But the Vikings, yes, they signed Jonathan Allen, they signed Javon Hargrave in free agency, but I don't think they're done building out the depth on the defensive line just yet. And the fact that they've brought these 3 in for top 30 plus Derek Harmon, who's also on there in the top 30, I think that shows it. Now, Stackhouse is an interesting guy because he's basically built like Linval Joseph, and he's the same kind of player. He 2 down, run stuffing, wide body, who's not going to give you much on pass rush. That's the kind of player he is. Brinson and Ingram Dawkins, on the other hand, have more pass rush ability. And so, but none of those guys are expected to go before day 3. But 3 Georgia defensive tackles, and Georgia's always a great place to look for talent because they're always have been so good over the past 5 to 8 years and maybe longer in college football. So keep an eye on those 3 guys in the draft as potentially being a Viking. Another thing that stood out in that list is when we talked about the visits that the Vikings had that have been leaked out a couple of weeks ago. One thing I said was that I don't see any tight ends on there, which seemed a bit weird because the Vikings do not currently have a 3rd tight end on the roster. As we
much
know,
less
Johnny
a 4th. Yeah.
Yes. Johnny Munt signed with Jacksonville, and Nick Muse is, he's with the Eagles right now. So they now have 2 guys they brought in for the top 30, Ben Urasek, which got mentioned below, from Georgia, another Georgia guy, and then Bryson Nesbitt from North Carolina. Again, neither of these guys are expected to go before day 3 if they get drafted at all. And what I've read about Nesbitt is that he might be one of those undrafted rookie free agent targets. But at least the Vikings have met with a couple of tight ends. And again, these are a couple of names to keep an eye on late on day 3 in the draft to see if the Vikings target them as being a developmental prospect for a 3rd tight end, somebody who could evolve and take a larger role, not next year, but somewhere down the line. And Urasek, from and Nesbitt and Urasek have different kind of skill sets. It sounds like I haven't seen Urasek play, but the scouting reports say he's more of a kind of a blocking tight end. If he's going to make the NFL, it'll be through blocking. Think of him as like kind of a Jeff Duggan, very poor man's Jim Kleinsasser kind of role. Whereas Nesbitt is really thin for a tight end. He's almost like a big jumbo wide receiver. So he's more on the wide receiving spectrum of the tight end as opposed, and not very good blocker at all. But again, two prospects to keep an eye on in an area where the Vikings don't have a lot of depth right now, tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last thing I want to mention was a couple of those wide receivers, the two wide receivers on that list. Chandler Brayboy from Elon, also the alma mater of Oli Udoh.
Okay, good memory.
And then Silas Bolden from Texas. Again, these guys may not get drafted. If they do get drafted, it's going to be late day 3, it looks like, basically on what I've read. But the interesting thing about these dudes is that they're both strong returners in college. Bolden is like a former track star, and he returned two punt returns for touchdowns in his career at Texas. Whereas, Brayboy was a very good kick returner at Elon. The Vikings really still have to settle who's going to return punts. Brandon Powell's not back. Doesn't look like he's going to be back. And who's going to return kicks as well. And we expect more kicks to be returned this year because of the NFL change with moving touchbacks to, what's it now, the 35?
35.
35, yeah. So the Vikings need to sort this out. Maybe Bolden and Brayboy are going to get a shot at making the Vikings by assuming those roles and being given a shot at those roles, punt returner or kickoff returner. Again, so you got to look at the roles that some of these guys might have and whether there's an opening on the Vikings roster. And at kickoff and punt returner, we do have
definitely is every year. Yeah. You want to do that. Somebody just gave us a thumbs down. Cool. Thanks for interacting. I did do some research on the list. There is one other returner. Brashard Smith,
right?
The SMU running back. Before he transferred to SMU, he was the kick returner for Miami. At Miami. And at Miami, he returned kicks regularly. He averaged 24.5 yards per return. In 2023, he had 14 returns for 343 yards. He did do some returning at SMU, but nobody can find our assistant couldn't find the stats on that one. But he is a returner. Now, he's a diminutive back. And what does Dave mean by diminutive? Small. He's 5'10", and he weighs 194 pounds is what he's listed at. So, but the way a small, fast back, and he ran like a 4.39 or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's not slow. To make a team is on returns. And so you might see that happen as well. He's going to be in that competition.
If he ends up being a Viking, for sure.
If he makes a team.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And I forgot about Brashard Smith. I did know that he had done quite a bit of returning in his college career. So, but maybe I passed him over, Dave, because we'd already talked about him in a previous show as one of the visits, and whereas Bolden and Brayboy are kind of new names that have popped up this week, and hadn't heard of Brayboy, of course, but he's got pretty decent wide receiving stats as well at Elon, but it is at Elon. It's not like he's playing Alabama and LSU every week.
Yep. Now, next topic in this week is an article from Ben Solak of ESPN.
Yeah, Solak's one of their analytics leaning writers, and this week he did for the Worldwide Leader of Sports did an article that looked at 12 quarterback prospects in this draft and 12 perfect landing spots for those 12 prospects. And one of the prospects he had landing in Minnesota, which
Ted
is going to
Glover. Ted's been. It's a long time since Ted has played.
But where this prospect is from would please our buddy Ted, who is a big time Ohio State Buckeyes fan, because Solak thought that he had the Vikings selecting in the 6th round. They have one pick in the 6th round right now, right as it stands. They had the Vikings selecting Will Howard, who had in the 6th round. And this year he had a fantastic senior season with the Buckeyes and also led them to a national championship. Now that was an interesting take by Solak, because I wondered, does it really make sense for the Vikings to pick a quarterback? Not really, I think, when you've got only 4 draft picks right now. But if the Vikings acquire more draft capital in the draft, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah does some wheeling and dealing and gets extra picks, and I expect that he will do that, then taking a developmental quarterback on day 3 does make more sense. Now, is it going to be Will Howard if they do that? Who knows?
Or is it going to be Bromson from Minnesota?
Yeah, probably not. And Max Brosmer, is one of the guys that was on the list that the Vikings have met with the top 30. Will Howard, who knows? But it did jog my memory, or not my, but it did raise the point about the Vikings' backup quarterback situation, their quarterback situation in general, where they only have J.J. McCarthy and Brett Rippon on the roster right now. And folks might have noticed on Friday that a couple of the potential options to be as a backup to J.J. McCarthy signed with other teams. Joe Flacco signed with the Brownies on Friday. Then
a return to the Brownies.
That's right. Didn't play there last year. And then Drew Lock is back in Seattle.
In Seattle, another return.
So the options...
Wonder if that means we get a QB backup that returns.
But the options are getting thinner and thinner to find a capable backup for J.J. McCarthy. I don't think we have one right now. Brett Rippon, I wouldn't consider as a capable backup. So the speculation has been that the Vikings are waiting on this, that they aren't going to make a decision on bringing in a backup quarterback until after the draft, because they don't want to potentially lose a comp pick in 2026. But that if that's the theory, if that is the strategy they're using, and it probably is, it does carry some risk, Dave, because as we've seen, a lot of guys, backup options, have signed with other teams since then, and some more might sign before the draft takes place in the next 11 to 13 days. And then Saturday, I was reading where Derek Carr, who's going to be the starter for the Saints, now he's got a shoulder injury, and his availability in 2025 is questionable right now. He might potentially miss the entire season. If that happens, suddenly the Saints, who will look pretty secure at quarterback with Carr as a starter, then all they've got is Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler as your guys. And I don't think the Saints are going to be, with a new coach, Kellen Mond, I don't think Kellen Moore, I don't think that the Saints are going to be comfortable with that. And I think with the potential starting spot open, does that mean Ryan Tannehill, who's been linked to the Vikings, and the Vikings have talked to him, is that kind of more of an appealing option for him?
Because he still wants to start.
And I think he probably has a really good chance of beating out Spencer Rattler and definitely Jake Haener if he goes to New Orleans. So maybe he's off the table in a week.
Maybe Aaron Rodgers is going to New Orleans.
Oh my God.
And Pittsburgh is totally screwed.
Tannehill might be very intrigued about going to New Orleans. So could other guys who I think would be potential serviceable, capable backups for the Vikings. Carson Wentz, Tyler Huntley, who is a guy I've always liked as a backup. Maybe they look at New Orleans as a better option than Minnesota because there's an opportunity to start there. again, it just goes to show that the Vikings, I don't feel they have a capable backup right now, and the options are getting slimmer and slimmer. Maybe Brett Rippon, they do feel very confident with him as being the backup. I don't.
I don't think so. Now, for the list of those that are still eligible and out there, there's Aaron Rodgers, of course, which we all want to throw up over. Ryan Tannehill, who wants to start, but maybe they've talked him into being a backup. Who knows? Carson Wentz. There's some Carson Wentz fans here. Of course, Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater. Well, I hinted at maybe there's a return. Will Teddy come back to Minnesota? I don't know. If he goes anywhere, it's probably Detroit. And Skywalking McCarthy says if Carr's out, Bridgewater might go back to New Orleans. That's possible. You mentioned Tyler Huntley. There's also some no names like Easton Stick and Jeff Driscoll that would definitely be off my list because what they do, nothing. They were worse than some of the other guys. Now there are some trade possibilities that are out there. There's, of course, Aiden O'Connell from the Raiders because the Raiders are moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And no, Jaron Hall isn't a free agent. He's on Seattle's squad. There's
Aaron does mention Sam Howell with Seattle.
Sam Howell. There's, of course, Kirk Cousins. But we'll see about that. And you asked about Will Levis.
Yes. Today I saw a few, I didn't read much into it, but I saw a few of the Viking websites talking about how suggesting a trade, the Vikings trade for Will Levis because the Titans look like they're moving on from Levis. That seems pretty clear cut. They've got the number 1 overall pick, possibly going to pick Cam Ward at that spot. And they also signed Allen as a veteran backup as well. So where's Levis's role? So there was, again, some speculation that Will Levis might be a target. Like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said, we'll look at all avenues at backup. Maybe draft, could trade, free agency.
And
we're going to build up the room.
The proposed trade is Will Levis and the 5th for their 6th.
Mm-hmm.
So a pick swap and Will Levis. Drop around. Whoops. Not a big payday on it, not a big loss on that, but it is out there.
It is. And I don't know how you feel about this, Dave, or you can chime in, but it would be, if that, again, that's a speculation. There's nothing to it at this point other than a few tweets and here and there. But,
Josiah Anderson chimed in on it. So, I mean, it's national.
Yeah. The Vikings saw Will Levis up close and personal last season. Outside of throwing a 99-yard touchdown pass that was really the result of Josh Metellus misplaying that throw, which should have never been caught. He played terrible. I don't know.
And when did he come out? 3 years ago?
No, I think he was only his second year last year, so came out in 2023.
So he was one of the quarterbacks that Kevin O'Connell said, nope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Remember? The quarterback killer?
Quarterback killer. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I don't see, based on, of course, that's not all the film on Will Levis, but when you're there, you get to see him up close and personal and see how your team's defense dismantled him. I don't know why the Vikings would have a whole lot of interest in Will Levis, but hey, he's got a great arm. There was talent there, and we know Kevin O'Connell loves quarterbacks and loves the idea of remaking them and working with them and developing them and doing what he can to make them, as he likes to say, their best version of themselves. So maybe Kevin O'Connell, even though the Vikings didn't end up drafting Will Levis in 2023, maybe Kevin O'Connell still felt highly about his abilities and would relish the opportunity to work with Will Levis. But again, this is just speculation at this point.
I just think it's the national media trying to generate momentum for a quarterback to go someplace, like we've heard for months now.
Yes.
Which brings us to our favorite quarterback.
Indeed. Hey.
That's sarcasm, folks, for those listening and can't see my face.
But hey, you know what? Backup quarterbacks? What about signing Aaron Rodgers to back up JJ McCarthy? Okay, stop it. Darren's just fooling here. He's not serious. But I do bring up Aaron Rodgers because we took a week off, Dave, because you were busy as all hell moving to St. Louis from Austin, but during that week, it seemed at that point the national media finally had come around, to the fact that Aaron Rodgers is not going to play in Minnesota in 2025 or any time. Dave applauds.
Yes.
Oh, so you know, I just to me that's and the reason that happened, I think, was largely because of the comments that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell made when they were interviewed at the NFL team owners meetings, where they came out and said all outside without explicitly saying JJ McCarthy is our starter in 2025. Their comments said that JJ McCarthy is the Viking starter in 2025, as it should be. And so, you know, and that kind of, so national media is finally on board with that, has resigned itself to the fact that Aaron Rodgers, who will generate a ton of traffic for them anytime they mention him, is not going to Minnesota. And it also, that's, you know, just think about all the hot takes we have had in the offseason, Dave, since January about the Vikings quarterback situations. First, it was Sam Darnold, right? Oh, Sam Darnold, the Vikings, they can't let him go. You know, they've got a contract offer out for him. They're very interested in bringing him back. That didn't happen. He signed with Seattle with a 3-year deal for big bucks. Well, not as big a bucks as he would have liked, but big enough, more than the Vikings were going to pay. And then after that, it shifted to Aaron Rodgers. Oh, the Vikings are talking to Aaron Rodgers. You know, they're very seriously considering him coming in and taking. They're not sure about JJ McCarthy. The injury, is he ready? Blah 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 blah. Well, what we learned with Kevin O'Connell in particular, with his interviews at the NFL team owners meeting, we found out a few things for sure about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. One, it was Rodgers that contacted the Vikings, not the other way around. Two, Kevin O'Connell mostly, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah a little bit, but it was mostly Kevin O'Connell who had the dialogue with Aaron Rodgers. And they talked about Aaron Rodgers' future in the NFL. We also know that both J.J. McCarthy and Brett Rippon were kept apprised of these talks the whole time. And no harm was done through all of this. And so through all those hot takes, Dave, the end result we have here is exactly what you and I told everybody for months. J.J. McCarthy was going to be the starter in 2025 for the Vikings, and that is what has happened. Despite all the hot takes and the ink spilled, I don't know if it's ink anymore, it's digital ink maybe.
Right, but yes, all the ink that was spilled over it and the air time, the electrons flowing back and forth. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
now,
so
you mentioned Kwesi shut it down and Kevin shut it down. But so did Mark Wilf when he talked to the press. Now, from what I've heard, they were getting up to 2 days prior to selling season tickets. And season ticket holders were going, hey, who's our quarterback? And calling the Vikings, who's our quarterback? If it's this one or that one, I'm not buying tickets. Which makes me interested to see, was there a survey result done by the Vikings to say, hey, which way we go, which would we sell more tickets? And if it came back, you're selling more tickets with J.J. McCarthy than you are with Aaron Rodgers, which I would have thought would have been hilarious, but I don't know. But it's curious. It's an interesting question. Which would sell more tickets?
Yeah,
a washed up Aaron Rodgers.
I almost feel like that would be a wash, in a way. Yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers being with the Vikings after his long career with the Green Bay Packers, that would be a turnoff for some Viking fans.
Yeah,
just like it was a turnoff for some Viking fans when Favre came aboard. Mm-hmm. But Favre eventually, quite quickly, won over.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Aaron Rodgers has that left in it.
I just don't think that Aaron Rodgers would be enough to significantly move the needle on people not buying season tickets to the Vikings if they're big Vikings fans. But J.J. McCarthy does not turn off anybody at this point. I think there's just pure excitement for the most part about what he can be as a Vikings quarterback, the unknown as it is. But yeah, but I don't know if it would have really moved the needle much on Vikings tickets. They're going to sell out every game anyway, every home game anyway. So Anthony had a question about just below. He just asked me specifically. I happened to see it about whether Levis is a good candidate for the Kevin O'Connell quarterback reclamation school, and I think any quarterback would be, would love to go to that school. It seems like Kevin O'Connell does a great job with that. With Levis, would he be a good candidate? Yes, because again, he's got a great strong arm. Very much like Sam Darnold as far as being able to sling it with velocity and hit all the tight windows. But it seems like he doesn't see the field very well, and his pocket awareness needs a lot of work. The Vikings sacked him, I think, 5 times in Tennessee that day. So those are things I think that Kevin O'Connell could work with and improve with him on. He's got pretty good mobility. He's a big guy, so he's got a lot of physical tools that you like. But I think the mental side of it, he hasn't figured out yet. And I don't know. Well,
even with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold in an interview said that Kevin O'Connell taught him how to read progressions and read the defense differently. And that was a huge benefit to him. Why he won 14 games last year. Besides working a little bit on mechanics. That's the advantage of having Kevin O'Connell as our head coach. And would Will Levis benefit from that? Oh, yeah, he would, without a doubt.
Now, does it lead to Sam Darnold-like play if he were to be forced into that situation? We don't know. But I think if you're going to bring in a quarterback like that, like I just said earlier in the thing that I don't see how interested the Vikings would be in bringing Levis in, considering the way he played against the Vikings last year. But he certainly fits the profile, young, and the physical tools that a lot of coaches would like the chance to. They might think that they can save him. Whereas he was not in a good situation in Tennessee, but he'd be in a better situation in Minnesota. Certainly, he'd have a lot better weapons to throw to than he did in Tennessee.
Well,
and that doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm. Now,
but it's still between the ears, a lot of it. Like, can he get that worked out?
And speaking between the ears, I saw an interview with J.J. McCarthy this week, where during last season, it was an interview of Aaron Jones talking about J.J. McCarthy on Good Morning Football. And he said he kept busy. He graded every single defensive player in the league.
How do you do that?
Well, he watched play. He watched film. Obviously on the teams we didn't play. And he's obviously looking for tendencies and looking for this and looking for that. The kid's driven. I can't wait to see how it all comes together. It's sort of like, I don't know if KOC suggested it. I wouldn't doubt it. Sort of like when the story of Justin Jefferson saying, well, what does Cooper Kupp do? And KOC says he knows every single play in the playbook. Every position type deal. And for you to be that good, you got to learn it. And Justin Jefferson did. Jets did. I wonder if it's part of J.J. McCarthy's upbringing you've got to know all these players and what their tendencies are if they do this or they do that and stuff like this. And there's other quarterbacks that Tom Brady's famous for it, going, yeah, I see him do this and I know exactly what he's doing. He's going into his second years of NFL players, first year playing because of last year's meniscus. And I think he's probably further ahead than just about every young quarterback at 2 years. That's what's got me pumped up about this kid being our starter. I think it's going to absolutely freaking rock. I could be wrong. I doubt it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to have confidence in these cases, Dave, because if and JJ McCarthy, you got to be right with JJ McCarthy, because it's going to be a very difficult time for the Vikings if McCarthy isn't the guy we hope he is and that we think he is, like the franchise guy. Otherwise, we're starting all over again at that position, and I don't want to do that because it seems like we've been starting over at that position every 2-3 years for as long as I can remember.
Yep. And Bulldog says watching Netflix QBs and they were taking tests nonstop. Kirk and Mahomes had to study a ton. Yep. It's a very cerebral part of the game. You've got to master it. You've got to be able to do that. And Tom Brady's the perfect example. He didn't have any outstanding physical talents. He couldn't throw a ball through a cinder block wall like Elway could. It was just, he had to be smarter and be able to implement it than everybody else to win. And he was, and that works. So, all right, now on to theme what?
3, but it's actually 1.
The music got this. There it is. Weird. Okay. Left guard.
Yeah, I think I wrote was, should we be guarded about the left guard position on the Vikings? Yeah. Of course, okay, everybody out here knows what the Vikings did in free agency, and they really attacked the interior offensive line. They remade it. They traded the guy who had been basically the starter for 2.5 years at right guard, Ed Ingram. They traded him to the Texans. They released 6-year starter at center, Garrett Bradbury. And then the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah signs Will Fries to take over at right guard and Ryan Kelly to take over at center. So the Vikings have done a lot at right guard and center. What they have not addressed so far is left guard. And Blake Brandel was your starter in 2024 at left guard, and it appears right now that Blake Brandel will be your starter at left guard in 2025. And Kevin O'Connell indicated this as well at the owners' meetings in his interview, where he talked about Blake Brandel and how he needed to have some grace, he felt, how his performance in 2024, because he went from having Christian Darrisaw by his side at left tackle for about not even half the season, and then had to transition and play with a totally new left tackle, Cam Robinson, for the remainder of the year. And his work, Brandel's work with Cam Robinson didn't go that well. Brandel's play really, really fell off with Cam Robinson playing next to him. So that's interesting, but it does worry me, like this whole thing of giving Brandel some grace. If he needs all the time, if he needs a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle behind him to just play passively, that makes me think that maybe he shouldn't be the guy that you have starting there. Like maybe you need somebody, perhaps you need somebody at left guard who, if there is an injury to your left tackle, again, God forbid, that his play doesn't slip so much when that happens. And so maybe you need to look at replacing Blake Brandel, or at least giving him some competition. And I think that, and particularly when you've got JJ McCarthy coming in, he's going to be looking like he's going to be your starter. He'll be his first year playing in the NFL, in his second year in the NFL, but his first year playing. I don't think you want his offensive line as solid as possible, giving him a nice, warm, safe cocoon in the pocket that he can
give him all
up.
those warm fuzzies. Yes,
that's right. Feel protected and secure, and deliver the ball with very little stuff going on around him. Well, if you've got a weak link amongst those five, teams are going to attack that weak link. And I think that should be a concern for the Vikings. Now, I think NFL draft experts have noticed this. And you've seen since free agency, even with what the Vikings did at right guard and center, you're seeing quite a few mock drafts now that are looking at seeing the Vikings take an interior offensive lineman with their first pick. Mel Kiper Jr., who's considered the most accurate mock drafter out there, this week he had one, and he had Donovan Jackson from Ohio State University getting selected by the Vikings at 24. And we've seen other mock drafts where they've had not Jackson, but they've had Tyler Booker from Alabama, considered the top guard in the draft, going to the Vikings at 24. You've seen your man crush, Dave, Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, go to the Vikings in mock drafts. These are just mock drafts, but they do show an indication of draft experts that they feel that the Vikings are going to need to or should address left guard, interior offensive line with early in the draft, which is interesting because these three that we just mentioned are considered the top three on the interior, I think, now.
They're consensus, the top three guards.
Top three, probably all of them are going to go in the first round or early second, if they slip a little bit. But Matthew Collar did a story looking at the interior this week. And one thing that his story noticed was that, and you say it all the time, Dave, about the development of young offensive linemen, but he tracked 22 players who have been drafted either as guard or center since 2021, drafted in the first round or the second round. And what he found was their PFF grades, again, PFF grades, so take it with a grain of salt, but their PFF, of those 22 players, only 3 of them had a PFF grade of over 70. That's
the goal. That's what we want.
And at 70, a grade of 70 or more means they're a difference maker on as a player on your offensive line. But that's only 13.6% of the 22 players. So not a very good ratio there. Meanwhile, there was, of those 22, 13, and this is just in their rookie year though, Dave, not over the 3 years, but just in the rookie year, again, only three had a great PFF grade over 70%, but 13 of those 22, which is like 59%, their PFF grade was 50 or lower,
which is bad.
Including as a rookie, including Ed Ingram as a rookie. So if the Vikings are looking to, in J.J. McCarthy's first year as a starter.
And Garrett Bradbury would have fallen in that category. Yeah, and he would. Virtually every interior lineman we've had over the last decade.
So if the Vikings are looking to get solid to better play at left guard and give J.J. McCarthy the best offensive line they can possibly give him, with 5 solid to really good to all-pro caliber talent on the offensive line, then sticking a rookie in there, drafting a rookie and sticking them in there, the history has shown recently that they're going to struggle their first year, and they might struggle beyond their first year. So that might not be the best way to go, particularly short term, which got me thinking about, and I hadn't thought about this much, got me thinking about Dalton Risner again. Now, once again, for the 3rd straight offseason, Risner is out there and he does not have a job. And I kind of wonder what Risner has done to piss NFL teams off, because, he's a guy that he's had, I think it's 87 regular season games he's played in 5-6 years in the league. He started 81 of them. He started 11 games at left guard last year for the Vikings when they signed him. He started, I think it was 8 this year at right guard after the Vikings replaced Ed Ingram with him. Now, he's never going to be an all-pro. I think that's clear. But last year, Dave, PFF grade had him but he's a pretty good pass protector. His PFF pass blocking grade was 76.2. That's
he
very,
lost
very
slowly versus Ed Ingram's losing fast.
they had his grade at 76.2, which is really, really good. They didn't have him giving up a sack and only 16 pressures over 500 and some offensive snaps. Now, run blocking, of course, is where he traditionally has been really weak at. He only had a 57.4 grade, run blocking grade, which is pretty poor. But yet in a league, Dave, we talk about it all the time in here, where every team complains about how there's not enough good offensive linemen. They're always looking for offensive linemen who can do the job. Reisner is a guy who is at least average, and he can, in pass blocking, he's well above average. He's pretty good. I just don't know why he doesn't have a job, including, so I'm thinking, what if you got Brandel, who is by no means a sure thing at left guard, being able to play even average. And last year, Reisner signed for the Vikings a 1-year deal, $2.4 million cap hit. That is peanuts for a starting offensive lineman. Like, I feel that the Vikings, I'd be okay with the Vikings bringing back Dalton Reisner. You showed me a TikTok post, Dave. It sure seems like he wants to come back to Minnesota.
It sure sounds to me like he's begging to come back to Minnesota.
Like, if the Vikings aren't going to take a young stud early in the draft in the interior to challenge Brandel, we're not sure if they're planning on moving Walter Rouse inside or if he's still a tackle. Maybe Walter Rouse is the competition for Blake Brandel, maybe not. But hey, Dalton Reisner is not going to cost you much. He's shown that he can be a starter, and as a pass blocker is very strong. And you've got a guy who's going to be going into his first year as a starter here in 2025. I would be quite fine with the Vikings signing Reisner for another 1-year deal, and providing competition to Blake Brandel this year. At left, the fact that he played right guard last year, Reisner, isn't a big deal, because the year before he played left guard. He can play either guard.
He had
position.
lower scores the year before as well, with a fully healthy Darren, just to let you know.
Yeah. So I did, Dave, would you be fine with Reisner coming back? I know you've considered him kind of meh in the past, but
if they need to fill a roster spot, sure, but I'd rather get some young developing guys. As we talked about the guards, we talked about the top three: Jackson, Booker, and Zabel, and people were chiming in with other names that are going to go down in rounds, late round 2, round 3. You can pick up guys 4, 5, 6 to compete. Now, none of those guys I expect to start past that top 3. If you draft a guard in round 1, he's going to start at least sometime in the season. He should be starting. But I don't. I think Risner's not going to be. It's not going to happen. Now, whether it does or not, fine. But he's an emergency break. In case of an emergency, break glass. Yes, we pass more than we run. Last year, it was 61% pass to 39% run. Kevin O'Connell is making a concerted effort to improve the run game this year.
This is true.
And now, will he go to balance 50-50? No, I doubt that. But he wants to improve the run. He sees where that's going to help him and his offense, to have guys that can run 4, 5, 6 yards at a clip or more to help advance the offense, and especially down in the red zone. And the one thing that Reisner can't do well is run block. So, and that's generally, even rookies can do decent at that. But and they still talk about, oh God, I was trying to remember where I saw it on. They still want the competition. They're all constantly looking to improve, and they may not be done. So we'll see if they go with a guard in the first round. I'd love to have Gray Zabel, because I got a man crush on the kid. for this year. He's my draft crush. So, but that's just me. Now, does that mean we give up Ravel or, some of the other players that are talked about that can fall in our range that you go, oh, yeah, John A. Barron, any
Herman.
of those, any of those guys could fall in there and they go, wow, yes, we want this guy. Let's see if we can pick up, somebody in the third because we have no second as of now.
That's going to change.
And, but it's, do I want to go O-line? Yes. And left guard? Oh, yeah, I do. I want to see a competition, but I'm also curious to see Rouse. Now, both Rouse and Brandell are what, 6th-round picks?
Yes. Yeah.
And so you almost get what you pay for. Yeah, there's the exceptions. I know that. Everybody knows there's the exceptions. But you almost get it. Aaron, not quite a man crush, but is my draft crush. So
Dave Likey Gray Sable. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I like the way he plays ball. Luke Braun talks about how he backpedals. And it's not a backpedal, Luke. I'm sorry. It's not. If you're watching, it's not a backpedal. He's chopping his feet. That's how I learned. And I learned from a 4-year All-American. And it's different than just the kick slide and then set your feet and go. It's a different style, but it works. And he's so accomplished and stood so far out against top-level talent at the Senior Bowl. Now, that's just one contest, one game, one practice, set of practices. But I think that's why I like him. But I'd be happy with even Booker. Booker, I have some questions over. And Jackson is my third guard. But they all three could go in the first round, or one could go in the first round. The other two fall to the top to second. Because, NFL teams don't like drafting guards high.
No.
So unless your name's Quentin Nelson, they don't. So.
No. The landscape's changed a little over the past couple of years, and particularly with the way the Eagles put the beat down on the Chiefs' interior offensive line, that traditional draft, you don't pick guards or centers.
Guards don't matter, right? As long as you got an average one, yeah.
That just like the running back narrative has changed a bit. I think that's changing on the interior guards, but
especially with the big beef in the middle of defenses, like the Giants and the Eagles and stuff that get interior push, and that caused problems for us last year.
Yeah, it caused problems for us and a lot of teams. Anthony was asking if there's any guard or any tackle that is looked at potentially could move to guard and start in 2025. And one that definitely has been mentioned is the Banks kid from Texas. I think Kelvin Banks is his first name.
Kelvin.
He's looked at as a guy who's likely going to be moved inside when he gets drafted. And he's a guy that's kind of fringe first round as well, although he'll probably go in the second round. But he's definitely one guy.
Gray Zabels played tackle.
Yes, that's right. He played tackle at North Dakota State. And he's definitely going inside at the NFL level. So there's two.
And he's according to Brandon Thorne, he's Brandon Thorne's number one center because the center class is horrible. And he's the number 2 or 3 guard. I think he's 2 for Thorne. I've seen him on different line guys rate him 2 and some rate him 3, but that's that's after watching his tape. So we'll see. Now, people, I know I saw a remark about that's a Spielman special, taking the tackle and making them a guard. That's normal in the NFL. 35 to 50% every year that happens. And it's because their arms may be, a little short, or whatever the reason is, they move them inside because they feel they play better that way. So,
the other final thought on this is that the Riggin and Reisner, if the Vikings were looking, you got to remember that a couple of guys that we looked at pre-free agency as, hey, would the Vikings be interested in these dudes on the interior? Brandon Sheriff is still a free agent. Will Hernandez is still a free agent. The issue with particularly Sheriff is that he's 33. So if you're concerned about the Vikings signing too many old guys, maybe you don't want to sign another old guy. And Sheriff has had a few issues with availability and injuries as well over the years. But those are two guys that are still on the street and have shown that they can play pretty good level of football when they're healthy in the NFL. But they'd be looking to come into a situation where they're the starter, I think, not competing for a starting position, unless they just don't get any offers and they're kind of like,
they're doing the Reisner thing.
Yeah. I'm going to take what I can get.
TikTok's begging for somebody to hire him. It is what it is. And it's possible. None of those free agents are going to be signed between now and the draft. Everything's waiting until after the draft. We're at that point. And then you'll see some movement after that. So, and we'll be here for it.
We will be. Skywalking McCarthy's just put a list in the comments of all kinds of tackles who could go to the guard list. There, Anthony. I'm sure you see it, but he's got looks like 8 names on there.
Membu, Banks, Zabel. Even though I think Membu's going to stay out at tackle. Saviana, Hollins, Travis, Ajani, Millam. I'm sure I butchered those names.
Yeah, Membu and Travis, the Vikings have had both of those guys in for top 30.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've, between interviews at the, after the season ended, they've gone through a lot of offensive linemen. I'm curious with the new coach, how that's going to work out.
Yeah.
Under Cooper. It's going to be interesting this year. I hope it works out great. I hope we have a top 5 offensive line to go with our top 5 defense.
Yep.
So
I haven't been able to say that in a while for offensive line, but one of these days will happen, Dave. One of these days it'll happen.
All right, buddy. Any last words?
Well, I just something I was thinking about during our week break, Dave, but I do want to, it reminded me, like, our show, I think, is the folks in the comments section. I just want to thank them. Like, I'd hate to say, like, we would have a show without them, but really it wouldn't be much a show without everybody. It always amazes me every week that there's people like Aaron, Skywalking MacArthur, like Anthony, they show up to every show that we do to listen to me yammer on and say all kinds of stupid stuff that's going to be wrong. And yet they come up every week. And I just can't thank you enough for the comments and taking the time out of your day to watch me talk about the Vikings and watch Dave talk about the Vikings. But Dave talks about the Vikings 7 days a week on First and SKOL. But I just, again, thank you for tuning in and week out and contributing to the comments section and keeping the conversation going. Just, you guys are awesome.
And we're back on our normal schedule starting today. We'll have 2 Real Fornos, and we'll have Sal on Tuesday. And who else knows what's going to happen this week? It's going to be fun.
It will be. Going to be a fun 2 weeks.
What do we say, buddy?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!